watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava, an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at the moment. The party of Maldives President Mohamed Muizzu wins control of parliament in an election landslide, with voters backing his tilt towards China and away from regional powerhouse and traditional benefactor India. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to China in the coming week as the Biden administration tries to ensure that the US-China relationship stays the course, even as the US expresses strong concerns about China's support for Russia. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi will arrive in neighboring Pakistan for official meetings with the host nation's leaders amidst Iran-Israel tensions. A single tweet from Elon Musk sent ripples through the Indian auto industry. Analysts predict a multi-billion-dollar investment by Tesla in Indian manufacturing facilities, potentially shaking up the EV market dominated by Tata Motors. Well, our big focus, the party of Maldives President Mohamed Muizzu won control of parliament in a Sunday election landslide, results showed, with voters backing his tilt towards China and away from regional powerhouse and traditional benefactor India. Now, Muizzu's People's National Congress actually won 66 of the first 86 seats declared according to the Elections Commission of Maldives, already more than enough for a supermajority in the 93-member parliament. Now, this vote was seen as a crucial test for Mr. Muizzu's plan to press ahead with closer economic cooperation with China, including building thousands of apartments on controversially reclaimed land. The PNC, meanwhile, and its allies had only 8 seats in the outgoing parliament, with the lack of a majority stymieing Muizzu after his presidential election victory back in September. Now, the main opposition, Maldivian Democratic Party, the MDP, which had previously had a supermajority of its own, was headed for a humiliating defeat with just a dozen seats. On the broadcast with us this morning, we have Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia joining us live on NDTV. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for making time for us.
Thank you.
He's also the former head of the division in MEA and handling the Maldives. Sir, this vote was seen as a crucial test for Mr. Muizzu's plan to press ahead with closer economic cooperation with China, including building thousands of apartments on controversially reclaimed land. But how exactly are you seeing this for India? Is it bad news?
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I think I will be happy to answer your straight question directly. But let me say that, first of all, in terms of my understanding, this question was not just about India-China, it was about certain economic and local political issues, and clearly President Muizzu has been able to convince the voters that he is the right man, he is the man of destiny, and as a result, he has got a very clear majority. But on the second hand, on the other hand, it's also very clear that it is a setback to India's neighborhood diplomacy. It is the rise of a combination of political forces which are favoring a very strong tilt towards China, and I think we can safely assume that this will be now intensified.
Right, sir. In the words of Dr. Jaishankar, history and geography are very powerful forces, and there's no escape from that. But Mr. Muizzu's closer alignment with China, could it potentially impact the strategic balance in the Indian Ocean region?
I would not jump to that conclusion straight away. I do agree with our minister that it is not easy to override the combined impact of history and geography. By that, what we mean, basically in one sentence, there is a very long history of close relations between India and Maldives that will not be gone. And the compulsions of history, the fact, the geography, that the two countries, Maldives and India, are close neighbors, that will have its own logic. So my advice in terms of policy would be that we try neither to antagonize Maldives nor overindulgent. Let us be correct and cordial, and let us see how far the new leadership will take Maldives in the direction of China.
Indeed. In fact, the Maldives President of the UN actually said that this election is less about geopolitical rivalry in the Indian Ocean island. It's actually more about the future of Maldives and the people. But for us in India, it's hard to ignore the geopolitics, especially when we know that Mohamed Muizzu won last year's presidential polls on his promises to actually cut off Indian influence with his India Out campaign. And as we know, his government is in the process of sending home 89 Indian troops, a move that has strained relations with New Delhi. But thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us on NDTV. Really appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you.
Well, the outcome of the parliamentary elections in Maldives is likely to give Mohamed Muizzu more freedom to pursue his pro-China policies, potentially impacting India's security interests in the region. Now, despite these developments, Mr. Muizzu has acknowledged India's financial support and expressed that India will remain the Maldives' closest ally. With that, let's turn our attention to the other big story we're tracking. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, will travel to China in the coming week as the Biden administration tries to ensure that the US-China relationship stays the course, even as the US expresses strong concerns about China's support for Russia. Now, this is actually Blinken's second trip to the country as a top US diplomat, and US President Joe Biden, as we had reported, spoke on the phone with Xi Jinping earlier this month, marking the first conversation between the leaders since their historic in-person summit back in November. But as far as Blinken's visit is concerned, this visit to China is the latest in a flurry of high-level diplomacy aimed at stabilizing China-US relations. It follows Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's recent trip to China, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Munich in February, and US President Joe Biden's talks with the Chinese president in California in November. Joining us now, International Independent China strategist Andrew Leung on the broadcast with us on NDTV. Thank you so much for making time for us and joining us on the World 24/7. You know, this morning, the Global Times editorial, which for the benefit of our viewers, I must mention, is backed by the Chinese Communist Party, they published an editorial about 12 hours ago explicitly stating that Chinese observers believe that this recent frequent visit of Blinken and the frequent visits of Blinken and a string of US officials to China recently indicate that Washington is unable to solve domestic and global issues without cooperation from China. In fact, China has also said that when seeking help from Beijing, the US would be wise to respect China and treat China as equals rather than condescendingly. This seems to be setting the tone of what to expect, really, from Blinken's touchdown, right, Andrew?
You summarized it very well, in the sense that there is no doubt that China's influence is rising, not only, of course, over the Maldives, but also in the region and around the world, including China's intervention over the war in Ukraine and also in the Middle East. However, there is a great disconnect between what the West thinks of China and what China thinks of itself. Because a lot of the rhetoric, anti-China rhetoric, is that China wants to conquer the world. China wants to push out the Western powers from the Asia Pacific. And of course, China is eating Americans' lunch over technology, over electric cars, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, from China's perspective, it is natural trajectory. From a relatively backward country about 40 years ago to a world great power, the second largest economy. But this kind of conundrum translates into geopolitics, and the West is worried that China's very competitive industries, including, for example, electric cars, are likely to wipe out a lot of the industries around the world. And of course, China's influence in the South China Sea and so on is going to change the dynamics in the region. So I think for China also, it needs to address these kind of concerns and promoting a better understanding between various countries. Hence, these high-level visits are extremely important.
Well, let's see what the outcomes are of Antony Blinken's touchdown. Thank you so much, Andrew, for making time for us and joining us live on NDTV. Well, in other news, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi will arrive in neighbouring Pakistan for official meetings with the host nation's leaders amidst Iran-Israel tensions. An announcement from Islamabad's foreign ministry stated that the talks will provide an important opportunity to strengthen bilateral ties and cooperation as far as trade, connectivity, energy and agriculture are concerned. It said Raisi's high-level delegation would include the Iranian foreign minister, other cabinet ministers and business representatives as well. But during this three-day stay in Pakistan, the Iranian president is scheduled to meet his counterpart Asif Ali Zardari and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, among other officials. The Pakistani statement said, without elaborating, they will also discuss regional and global developments as well as bilateral cooperation to combat the common threat of terrorism. As you know, Iran and Pakistan share a 900-kilometer border, which is prone to militant infiltration, smuggling, as well as other illegal crossings too. The countries have accused each other of not preventing militant groups from sheltering on their respective lands and launching cross-border terrorist attacks. My colleague Mohammed Ghazali has been tracking the latest developments for us. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, as these meetings take place in our neighbourhood, any red flags India should look out for?
India's relations with Iran has been very old, and it's a standalone relations as far as Iran's relation with Pakistan is concerned. And this meeting, which is happening from today onwards, when Iran's president will be visiting Pakistan for 3 days, is coming in the backdrop of the attacks between the two we saw in January earlier this year. More than economic ties and bilateral trade, there are two things which will be on table, which is very key for both the nations. Is one, it's to amend their ties after a dip in diplomatic relations back in January, and also there is a project which has been on a standstill since 2013, is the gas pipeline between Iran and Pakistan on their border, which is around 1800 kilometers of border between the two countries. Iran has constructed the pipeline on its side, but Pakistan has not yet completed it since 2013 due to the economic sanctions on Iran. Pakistan, being an US ally, is also concerned about that fact, that whether it should complete that gas pipeline or not, because Iran's ambassador to Pakistan a couple of weeks ago said that Iran and Pakistan need each other, and Iran can sort of fulfill all the energy demands of Pakistan. So that will be one key element which will be looked out for as far as both the countries are concerned. But beyond that, for India, as of now, the experts feel that there is no red flag, because India's relations with Iran is very old. India has been coordinating with Iran for the rescue of the crew, 34 crew members who were on a vessel which was hijacked by Iran from a coast of UAE. So as far as the coordination or diplomatic relations with Iran is concerned, India doesn't have to worry about what is happening between Pakistan and Iran, but they will certainly keep an eye to see that what kind of ties and what kind of relations prosper after this meeting.
Right, as always, thanks for joining us with that update, Ghazali. No red flags to look out for at the moment, but Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us live with that update. We also have with us former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal on the broadcast with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Dayal, for joining us live on NDTV. You know, border security and the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline are expected to be top of the agenda during this meeting. The gas pipeline issue, though, is set to be an uneasy conversation to hold for Mr. Zardari, since Pakistan needs to be treading a careful path. This is what many experts are pointing out, in order to not rattle Washington and attract sanctions for doing business with Iran. What's your take?
Well, I think that the gas project has run into problems since quite some time. This was intended to feed Pakistani power plants, and it had been inaugurated with great fanfare in March 2013. But the project immediately stagnated following the international sanctions in Iran. Now, as your correspondent, Mr. Ghazali, mentioned, Tehran has built its own section of the 1,800-kilometer pipeline, but Pakistan has not built its part. In February this year, Pakistan's outgoing caretaker government approved the construction of an 80-kilometer section of the pipeline primarily to avoid the payment of billions of dollars in penalties to Iran due to years of delays. But at the same time, Washington has warned that Pakistan could face US sanctions, saying that it does not support the pipeline going forward. So this is a dilemma for Pakistan. On the one hand, it stands to annoy America. On the other hand, it faces the possibility of having to pay penalties to Iran. I think
But sir, there are also valid arguments in South Asia especially that assert that the US no longer has the moral authority to impose sanctions on either Iran or Pakistan if both countries exercise their sovereignty and agree to buy and sell anything to anyone to another, not after his support of the Gaza genocide. Do you believe that as well?
Well, it's all a matter of might is right. America exercises influence over a number of countries and is therefore able to impose terms on them. America has been a very, very strong force where Pakistan is concerned. Pakistan relied on the United States for its weapon supplies. And although now that source seems to be drying up due to factors, but nonetheless, US influence in the region is very strong. And I don't think Pakistan can ignore the pressure which the United States brings to bear on it.
Right, and if Pakistan pursues this pipeline project, what about looking for funders, sir? Beijing, we know, could be wooed. Moscow could also be an option. Can you think of any others?
Well, Pakistan has been going around with a begging bowl all over the place to meet its requirements of foreign currency. And if push comes to shove, it will go to China, to which it already has a huge debt. It may also go to other countries, such as those in the Middle East. But it is not going to find it easy to get funding. But I may mention one thing, since you're talking about President Raisi's visit, the overall context of this visit is the geopolitical situation in the region. It has not been mentioned in your correspondence dispatch that Iran cannot afford to have a troubled relationship, a rocky relationship with Pakistan when tensions between Iran and Israel are escalating. Absolutely. And President Raisi's visit is taking place 3 months after the ties between these two neighbors suffered a setback. And he's intending to normalize relations and build a smooth relationship. Of course, the gas pipeline is one aspect of it, but the overall context is to have a better relationship with Pakistan when Iran's own relations with Israel are facing increasing tensions.
Well, only time will tell if Washington is actually in a charitable mood, though as far as the gas pipeline is concerned, with countries engaging commercially with Iran. Let's see the outcomes of this touchdown. Thank you so much, though, as always, Ambassador, for joining us live on NDTV.
Thank you.
Well, analysts are predicting a multi-billion-dollar investment by Tesla in India. We're bringing you the inside details after this very short break.
This show isn't just about news from the southern states. It's one that looks at the rest of India and the world from a diverse South India point of view, because NDTV has always taken the southern view seriously.
The Southern View with Veera Raghav, only on NDTV 24/7.
The biggest carnival of democracy, India's general election.
Prime Minister Modi makes a formidable bid for a hat-trick.
The opposition is trying to mount a united challenge.
And the southern parties are standing their ground.
As battle lines are drawn,
Join us on an exciting journey on the road to 2024.
Indian elections, a festival like no other.
And NDTV covers elections like no other.
When India votes, you can count on us.
Welcome back. Well, a single tweet from Elon Musk sent ripples through the Indian auto industry. Analysts predict a multi-billion-dollar investment by Tesla in Indian manufacturing facilities, potentially shaking up the EV market that's dominated by Tata Motors. Now, if successful, India would become the fourth country to house a Tesla gigafactory, joining the United States, Germany, as well as China. Here are the details for you.
Elon Musk's much-awaited visit has been postponed to a later date this year. When Musk hinted at his visit to India earlier, expectations soared. It was anticipated that his visit could potentially mark the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar investment by Tesla in an Indian manufacturing facility, potentially shaking up the EV market currently dominated by Tata Motors. If successful, India would become the fourth country to house a Tesla gigafactory, joining the US, Germany and China. India now allows EV imports with a duty levied at 15% for products priced above $35,000, provided minimum investment of Rs 4,150 crore in a manufacturing plant. This paves the way for Tesla's entire range to enter the Indian market. The government mandates 25% localization in the first 3 years, rising to 50% in 5 years. India aims for a significant target, 30% EV car sales by 2030. Nitin Gadkari, Minister of Road Transport and Highways, says Indian auto industry will get a big push with Tesla's entry in India.
हिंदुस्तान में सभी ऑटोमोबाइल के all brands in the world present है. टेस्ला की कमी थी, टेस्ला आएंगे और मुझे लगता है यहाँ से हमारे ऑटोमोबाइल का एक्सपोर्ट ज़्यादा होगा. अभी हम लोग लगभग 5 से 6 लाख करोड़ का एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं और बढ़ेगा और वर्ल्ड में अभी हम तीसरे नंबर पर हैं. आने वाले समय में हम नंबर वर्ल्ड में 3-4 साल में एक नंबर का मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बनेंगे, ऐसा मेरा विश्वास है.
Chetan Maini, the pioneer of India's EV journey and founder Sun Mobility, believes Tesla's entry will have a tremendous impact on EV infrastructure.
Tesla being one of the global leaders, having them in India has, tremendous amount of impact. Clearly, of course, it's about getting new products which customers would love to have. It's about bringing in investments in the country, but it's also about the supply chain. I think the commitments about making more in India means that our tier 2 supply chain gets stronger, right? And we get to manufacture components that are very critical. So when that ecosystem is coming in with that commitment, it starts to build in new technologies within the tier 1 suppliers, which I think is very important.
When Tesla does enter India, eager fans can aspire to own the entry-level car Model 3 at Rs 39 lakhs, while the Model X could reach Rs 95 lakhs. Puneet Goyal, co-founder Blue Smart, which is one of the biggest EV fleet buyers in India with over 7,000 premium and mass market EVs in their portfolio, thinks this is the right time for Tesla to enter India.
Vertically integrated approach of energy infrastructure and mobility allows consumers to then, come out of range anxiety. Although the cars have great range, on a single charge, you'll find a Tesla Model 3 or Model Y having north of 500 kilometers on a single charge or 400 kilometers on a single charge, and that's pretty adequate for, for intra-city transport with investments in energy infrastructure that they're going to do. Given that they're also an energy company, Tesla is just not a mobility company. They are into solar and they are into building charging stations. I think that vertically integrated approach will be the success for anyone out there.
Elon Musk's arrival is poised to disrupt not just the mainstream EV market, but also the luxury segment. Tesla holds a price advantage over established players like Mercedes and BMW due to lower import duty. It is yet to be seen if incumbent players can also avail the same benefits. The competition extends to Korean manufacturers like Hyundai, whose Ioniq 5 model offers a competitive alternative. Though the Indian EV market share remains in low single digit, it witnessed a phenomenal 91% growth in FY24 over the previous year. Competition is heating up. The Tata Group leads the pack. But Mahindra & Mahindra, another EV powerhouse, welcomes the challenge. Tesla's Indian foray comes amidst a slowing growth in major EV markets like the US, forcing them to downsize. Additionally, Chinese manufacturers pose a significant threat with their cost-effective EVs. BYD, a Chinese EV giant, outsold Tesla by over 60% in 2023. Entering India offers Tesla a host of benefits: access to the world's third largest car market, geographic diversification, and potential cost advantages through local manufacturing. India, with its robust export industry, over 6 lakh cars exported in FY24, could also serve as a production hub for Southeast Asia and Latin America.
Well, thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. We'll be tracking the latest developments for you. Do stay tuned.